All right, crypto volatility, but also the S&P is on the move. So we're going to be breaking down all that for you guys today. And of course, have one of our special guests, Mr. Gareth Soloway, joining us in today as well. You guys don't want to miss it. Stay tuned right here. My name is Paul Barrow. Welcome back into Tech Path. All right, let's get started. Welcome in, Mr. Gareth Soloway. Great to have you back.
Thank you so much. Great to be back.
Nice to see you there. I see you're in the war room, I feel like, ready to do some serious trading.
That's right.
All right. Let's get into a few points here, Gareth, and then I want to kind of start on the front end of the show on the S&P 500. So a couple of points I want to hit on here. This come in from Kobe EC. U.S. equity concentration just hit another record high. Top 5 stocks in the S&P now account 25% of the entire index. That's crazy for 5 stocks to control that much. Meanwhile, the same 5 stocks currently account for 70% of the gains this year. This is bananas. Why? I mean, you're not making any money unless you're just betting on these 7. So very interesting thing. I want to jump over to the first few. And not that they are the ones making money here, but I want to talk about Robinhood. Robinhood obviously had some earnings issues. We saw the stock plummet last week. My question to you is, how does Robinhood play out, and would this be a good one to go into?
Yeah, so just starting out with your first point, I mean, it is ridiculous to have that much weighting on 5 companies, especially with companies that have a lot of exposure to China. And again, we had that meeting with Xi and Biden just the other day, but again, anything goes wrong there, that's a lot of risk. I mean, you could almost talk about it being a national security threat to have that much involved in China with that type of power over the U.S. stock market. So I do think that is a concern, even if it is a small percentage chance that something like that happens. But yeah, I mean, looking at Robinhood, let's take a look at the chart here and see what we got. So Robinhood obviously took a hit on earnings. We know that, again, their earnings were not great. It had a little gap down and then a drop, little bit of a bounce, and we're right back down to these levels. Now, the biggest thing that I see here is that if you compare this to the S&P chart, this is basically the opposite of the S&P chart, right? So that's a concern, because if the S&P starts to pull back, does this cause Robinhood to go lower? Now, the big level to watch here, there's a couple levels. So number one, this is your first support right around $7.65. We know that we're above that by about 40 cents or so here. And then if we continue down, you have that double bottom, that ultimate low at $6.83. So again, if I zoom out, we can see that this stock used to be a huge monster in 2021, but has slowly gone lower. And I would just say this is listen, if you have a small percentage of the portfolio you like to take shots in, then Robinhood might be a good play. You just kind of tuck it away for a few years. I think if volatility resumes and smaller investors start trading more, then this is a great place to be. Maybe with the crypto environment now, it's starting to do a little bit better, but just be aware that there could be just a little bit of downside still to go.
Yeah, the news for Robinhood this week, of course, was kind of the CEO Vlad calling out big banks, talking about launching the savings accounts for them. So that in itself, along when you think about Robinhood's potential, especially within the crypto markets, because the likelihood is we're going to see crypto market activity before we see an S&P recovery at some point, when we do see a slice back into the S&P. And if that is the case, then obviously trading volumes and volatility would bode well for Robinhood in general. Another one I wanted to hit on is DraftKings. DraftKings, couple of news items here. Many people kind of hoisting their outlook based on obviously the growth of DraftKings, but it's also been rallied a bit here with the launch of ESPN Bet. So obviously Penn involved in this whole kind of connectivity around this. And let's not forget, DraftKings does have a bit of a tie into the crypto market with use of Polygon in terms of NFTs and NBA Top Shots, things that have been happening around that space overall. First of all, do you like DraftKings right now as more of a long-term bet here?
Yeah, I think DraftKings is an interesting one on the longer term basis. Shorter term, it's a little bit concerning right now, and I'm going to show you why, right? So if we flip over to the chart here, what we can see is that if you take this high from 2022 and connect it to this highest point, we actually just slammed into resistance here just underneath 39. So what I would be looking for here is some sort of pullback and consolidation, maybe back to about 35. And then what you do is you say, okay, well, now do I like it as a long-term entry price? And to do that, what we want to do is we want to go to a larger time frame. And I would say, yeah, it looks interesting. I would say there's decent upside to 42 after that pullback and potentially even retesting this high over here. So I think I like it as a longer term play, meaning that, if your horizon is 1, 2, 3 years out, in the short term as an entry, I probably would be a little careful here. It has gone on quite a run just in the last, 3 weeks or so, from about $25 to 38. So I'd stay on the sidelines till we get some sort of pullback first.
I just look at it in the sense that with ESPN Bet hitting the market and just making sports betting so much bigger in general. This was the app list right here. I'll zoom in on that a little bit. There was the ESPN Bet app, of course, flying to the top because obviously it's a brand new one. But you had, Prize Pick is in there, FanDuel's in there, NBA is in there, and then DraftKings right there, obviously also in there with pretty much the behemoths of sports betting. And the opportunity here, I think, is just going to become bigger just in the sense that you're going to have a lot more awareness around this. Now you have a major network going to be really kind of focusing in on this. So I don't know if that will be a competitive scenario. Obviously, Penn tied in and around all of this. It'll be interesting to watch. That leads us
I do think.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to add in is I think that's where the long-term play comes in, is that you're right. More people will get into sports betting. Sports is continuing to be a huge environment. So the question is, right now after the run, it's saying, okay, maybe I don't chase it at these levels, but on a pullback, that's where you want to start potentially getting involved.
Yeah. Okay. So let's kind of transition a bit here into crypto, get into some of the leaders that have been really flying up the charts over the last couple of weeks. I think a lot of people have looked at this and said, hey, are we in the bull run? Is this it? In Gareth's opinion. All right, we're gonna probably clip this, Gareth. So here it is. In Gareth's opinion, are we in the bull run?
So you're in a mini bull run. There's no doubt about it, right? So we've seen altcoins. There have been certain altcoins that have gone up 200 to 300% that are big names like Solana, Avalanche, all right? I mean, we've seen these type of moves. Bitcoin has been generally trending up for the last year plus at this point. So yes, you are in a bull run. The question is, when people say bull run, they automatically assume new all-time highs. And I'm a little skeptical on that at this stage. And understanding that you're still going to get pullbacks.
Do you think that the scenario, before we get into Bitcoin and the ETF and what that might do, but I'm just going to, your opinion on really when you look at the potential scenario of a spot ETF, do you think that's really going to have a big effect on Bitcoin as a whole?
So in the short term, I think, and this is the disconnect, is smaller investors, the retail crowds, crypto Twitter, crypto X, they're assuming that as soon as it gets deployed or approved, you're going to see this new bull run to new all-time highs. I think that it's going to take a lot longer. Having a spot ETF, right, is a step in the right direction, but it's still not going to make grandma who's 90 years old put a large chunk of money into, right? So you have to understand it's going to take time. There's a trust that has to be built. And honestly, we've still seen continued kind of fraudulent activities, filings and so forth that have broken a lot of that trust, or at least it has to be built back up. So the spot ETF is one more piece of the puzzle that will make for a huge long-term value in Bitcoin and in cryptocurrency. But I think it's faulty to expect that you get an approval, and I do think honestly, you get one of those what they call God candles, right? Because people will rush in. But honestly, I will be looking to short it. I will short into that and wait to buy once it pulls back.
And I'll compare that when we get over to Bitcoin in a minute, because we've got some other analysts out there that are kind of pointing in that direction. I want to jump back to MATIC, okay? And MATIC, of course, if you go back here and look at this from mid-October to where we're actually trading, and this is after we've seen a bit of a soften in the market, down up 63%, but down, of course, right now on the week. When you look at Polygon and MATIC in general, what are your thoughts on this token, and could we expect some more long-term potential here for MATIC as a whole?
Yeah, so MATIC to me, and I'll jump my chart up on the screen here, is so what we've actually done is we've had a nice move up into resistance, though. And again, I want to show you where these lines come from. So you take this bullish run and you have the pivot low and the pivot low and this pivot low and then this pivot high. That's really where we went into. And you also take these lows and you stretch them through. And it's amazing how charts work like this. But the low here to the low here to the low here, and then it happens to be the high here. Also notice it's the high right over here. So in the
Right.
near term, this is a short-term high pivot. But this is the kicker, is after a bull run like this, what you do is you buy support. So you have to respect the move. And when it pulls back to a level, and I'm going to show you where I'm going to be a buyer here, right here. So basically 66 cents right in this range, that's where you get a pullback into lots of support right through here. And that's where I think you buy. And then you see retest those, dollar highs and maybe break out to the upside.
Interesting. Okay, I like that move. That's a good strategy too. Of course, will it get there is the question mark, because a lot of people might say,
That's the
okay,
question.
maybe Matic never touches it, and we lose that exposure.
Well,
All right,
and I
let's
just
jump.
want to just to mention there, and
Yeah,
that's a normal feeling for people, right? Oh my goodness, what if it doesn't hit that exact penny? So what you do is you leg in, right? So let's
yeah.
say you put an order at 71 cents, and that's only
Hmm.
1/5 of what you want to accumulate, and then it's 69 and 67, and
I like
basically
it.
there are methods to make sure you gain exposure, but you leave enough in the tank to be able to handle it if it does get low enough.
What is this? This is dollar cost averaging, Gareth.
What
What
on
is going on
earth is
here?
that?
I love it. Anyway, let's get into this. Bitcoin spiking 800 on claims that the SEC is engaging with exchanges over spots. Basically, this headline came over from this tweet right here from Eric Balchunas coming in, of course, on the 17th there. Hearing chatter, SEC's trading and markets engaged with exchanges this week on spot ETFs. This was 19B, basically a forum that's advising them the ETFs to do cash creatives versus in kind. So mainly what this simply means is that there's a lot more steps in the process that are being completed here. Now, if you take that and we go look at the Bitcoin chart with you, Gareth, where do you see Bitcoin let's say through the holiday and into the first week of December?
Yeah, so what we can see here is that we basically have what's called a wedge pattern building, and wedge pattern is an upsloping trend line here, and you have your flat top, which right here, and then just a couple days ago we hit that the day before we
Mm-hmm.
hit the low end. So as a wedge pattern tightens, right, as we get over here, it's going to eventually force price out of this range, and generally you get a big move outside of that range. So I would continue to remain bullish on Bitcoin here as long as you don't start trading below this lower trend line. As long as you stay in here, I would remain bullish. And I think, again, whether it's into year end or January, a spot ETF is coming, at least one, and you'll get that at least one sort of surge to the upside. So I like the price action here. I think, again, as long as it holds this level, which is right now around 36,000 or 35.5, you stay bullish on it and you can stay long.
Yeah. Gareth, in that scenario, because this would be more of a strategy play, and if you think about investors that say, all right, well, if Bitcoin does move, it's probably going to see maybe a 10, 15, 20% move within this news. The other opportunities is that bleed over effect that it has into Ethereum and maybe even into some of the blue chip altcoins, whether it's Avalanche or Solana or some of those that are kind of, what would you play? If you were looking at those markets, would you still play Bitcoin as one of the lead horses? Or would you say, no, I think I'm going to wait for one of these other horses to kind of herd along the pack here and then see a
Yeah.
slingshot around the edge? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I think if anything, you're sticking with Bitcoin, maybe Ethereum in this situation. Number one, the altcoins have run tremendously already. So again, you have to ask yourself, how much more can Solana go up in this
Mm-hmm.
environment, right? Where it's getting a little too extended. You have to see if it pulls back. But I think also there's, the news specifically on the spot ETF is for Bitcoin. And so that's going
Right.
to draw a lot of interest in. And I think it maybe bleeds over because obviously we've heard about potentially an Ethereum ETF coming out, a spot ETF there as well. And so I think those two lead horses benefit the most. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if money comes out of altcoins and actually goes into Bitcoin in that scenario
Interesting.
where that approval comes out.
Interesting. Yeah, because if you look at the ETH chart right now, if you go back to the 19th of October, ETH only up 25% here. So many people are saying,
Yeah,
well, ETH hasn't really had a run yet. Sure,
it
it did
hasn't.
make it up, it did make it up to 2100, mid 2100s. But the opportunity here is a bit bigger. Do you like Ethereum into the first quarter of next year, maybe as a longer term play here? Where do you see it projected out over the next few months?
Yeah, so I think the key with Ethereum is, in looking at the charts here, is that so we did just run up and hit that double top, right? The double top that we hit back in
Mhm.
April. So that reminds me very much of what Bitcoin did. If we flip back to the Bitcoin chart, that was very similar to what we did here, and then we hit that double top on Bitcoin here before backing off. So to see that pullback in Ethereum is basically, it's almost like looking at history of Bitcoin, of what happened, right? And eventually we did come up and break through that level. So I think with Ethereum, you're looking at the same situation, right? So we've hit the double top here, right over here. Now we're pulling back. We may go a little bit lower, but ultimately you buy that pullback expecting eventually that breakout on Ethereum.
So this would be another token that you could look at, kind of a stair-stepping dollar cost average into lower spins. That takes a lot of
Exactly.
convincing, to some investors as they watch that chart
I know.
continue to fall down. So it's a tough one. But hey,
I
listen,
know. And
that's where
the one thing I do want to mention too is, like, I'm talking relatively bullishly on crypto, but I do want to just mention that there is still one small risk that crypto could have a big dump out. And that would be if the equity markets, in my opinion, were to see a major, major collapse, like 50,
yeah.
60%. Let's say we go into a tailspin, inflation still is slightly elevated, and we see the Fed unable to print our way out of those scenarios and the economy goes into the pits, then I do think I do worry in those situations that you could see Ethereum moving back to 1100, Bitcoin possibly even 15,000 or lower. But again, that would require the stock market
Right.
to really take a tremendous dump.
We would need some big
Panic.
seizures there, yeah,
Yes,
in the
big
market
time.
itself. With that being said, Gareth, you look at CPI numbers came in somewhat positive this week,
Yeah.
and we haven't necessarily seen the Fed waffling on saying, I'm not going to lower rates any longer. Maybe they're going to hold, and we do see kind of this push out that some people still anticipate maybe a soft landing. I mean, what would be the catalyst? Or is there anything you're watching for that would potentially put us down? Energy prices are down. Um,
Right.
where is the potential here other than something cataclysmic that happens?
Yes, I think really the only risk that the economy has now is that we're starting to see the economic data slowly get a little worse, right? So jobless claims
Right.
231,000 yesterday, and
Mhm.
that's was more than the 220 expected. And so if we were to see these numbers all of a sudden jump closer to 300,000 and then 350,000, I think that the market overall would start to get nervous that, oh my goodness, did the Fed over tighten, right? And it's the over tightening risk, and can they loosen quick enough, or can they loosen enough overall with inflation still
Yeah.
elevated above 2%? And that's really the only scenario where I see a huge dump in the stock market if you get that situation to arise.
Gareth, has there been any change in your opinion when you look at what Chair Powell has said for 2024 of whether or not we'll see a push up in the calendar of possibly seeing a rate cut? Or do you feel like he's still mid-year to late year next year?
I think he's still anticipating mid to late year, but I do think that we have to see how quickly the data kind of spirals. If you look historically, like even in 2007 going into 2008, it started very slowly and then the acceleration was intense. And I think
Right.
that's the one caveat where if we start to see these economic numbers really fall off a cliff, then you could all of a sudden be expecting a rate cut by March even.
Well, the key there is managing price, flexibility in the markets. And if we do see pricing start to come down just because of the lack of what we're seeing, whether it's in the job side or finally the consumer data catching up with itself, whether it's credit or just pressure in general of inflation. I mean, because when you look at the real numbers of food inflation, whether it's eating out or just going to the grocery store, those numbers don't necessarily correlate with the inflation numbers that are coming back in, obviously, from the Fed. So there's some interesting um, byproducts of what I think we're in the middle of right now. The question
And
will be January, February. Do you think that
right.
data would be the ones to really watch closely?
I think probably by February we have to be really looking at this data. And I also think that there's a lot of ancillary data points that are concerning for me. For instance, credit card debt, new all-time
Yeah.
highs on credit card debt. It's showing you that the consumer doesn't want to change their spending habits, but in order to maintain those spending habits, they're having to put a lot on credit cards, right? And so you're seeing, all these price cuts in automobiles. We're seeing that, you're seeing all the Teslas, they're cutting price. They understand that not only is there a war, but people are starting to have a harder time affording some of these goods. And that eventually should trail us into some sort of recession. The question is, how bad of a recession?
Yeah. We're going to hit two more tokens here, Gareth. One, of course, is going to be Solana, and then also Render. Solana achieves new yearly highs, 17% surge now. Cathie Wood is out there, tooting Solana's horn now. So, I mean, she's been an ETH lover, and now she's in the Solana camp here. Is she hedging her bet? What's going on here? We've seen some pretty crazy charts with Solana. Where do you see this one going?
Yeah, Solana has been wild. I mean, way further of a move than I even thought possible. To see it go, I think it's about 260% just from mid-October to the recent highs. Now, it has come into some resistance up here. $68 to $70 is a lot of resistance. So it looks like you can start to see all these little tails. That's telling you there's sellers coming in here. Then you had this green candle, a reversal candle the next day. That's also a bearish sign. So you're starting to see kind of some weakening fundamentals and technicals in the Solana chart. So my expectation is for some sort of retrace back down to about $40, right down into this range where it was consolidating. And then the question at that point is, does it get its next leg up where it can go back to $80? I will show you this line here. So if we look at this, right, these were these previous lows of this kind of first initial dip. That'll be a target price at around $80 that at some point I do think it tests.
Okay. All right. So I like that overall in terms of where the potential is for Solana. Obviously, a lot of things happening right for Solana. They've got the Visa test going. That's most likely to come out of test. We'll probably see some things there. Firedancer just recently had launched in reference to just transaction speed. That's going to continue. I anticipate we'll probably see some more partnerships that will be very unique with Solana coming up. So I'm watching this one very closely. Let's jump over to Render. Render, of course, doing a couple of things out here. One, of course, the prediction of Render possibly going to $10. Now, this is an interesting price point for Render. And I want to get your opinion on this one, because this is, if you think of it, it's blockchain cloud compute, decentralized. Mm-hmm. Overall, this is a great strategy. It's a great, technology. What are your thoughts, though, in terms of the token price?
Yeah, I mean, token prices had to move up, and if we flip over to it here, I mean, it's had a good move off of the lows from about $1.30 now and touching and getting above $3. I like this consolidation right in here. This is what you really want in a chart, and because it essentially digests the recent move, and then you could see it having another push up. Overall, it looks to me like, just looking at the chart, that you've hit a little resistance right here, right? So if we take this pivot point right back here and we draw our trend line across, that's kind of right where it's stalled out here. But again, anytime you're dealing with cloud computing and those type of things, that if this is done right, this could have eventual quite a move continued up in its chart. So I would just say right now, understand resistance is around 330. If it can bust through 330, your next level is probably around 420.
Yeah, and I think a lot of our viewers have been, following along pretty heavily. We're a big lover of the tech that Render is bringing to the market, and also just the ecosystem, obviously tied into Solana. There's some definite benefits there. So again, interesting thoughts on where you think Render might go for sure. Is there anything that you're watching right now, Gareth, that you'd say, hey, this is a token, right? Especially on the crypto side, this is a token I'm looking into a little bit deeper. And I like some things that are happening with the way the charts are lining up. Anything that you can give us as far as alpha?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the only thing that I would kind of keep an eye on here is Cardano, right? And just bringing up the chart on Cardano, it's had a run, but if you look percentage-wise at a lot of the other altcoins, they've gone way further. So again, you went basically from 24 cents to 38 cents, and that's only about a 50% move up, and it surely did hit resistance here, but it's now consolidating. So, at some point, the question is, does this have a bigger run to it that could match a Solana, an Avalanche, or some of these other coins? And so it's just one I'm keeping on my radar. I want to kind of watch this consolidation. If it really starts to break north of 38 and 39 cents, I think that's where you could hop on board for a bigger move to the upside.
There you go. You heard it. Gareth is a Cardano lover. I like it. I like it. Hey, if you guys haven't checked out Gareth, go over to In the Money Stocks. Of course, you can do that, and of course, get on his YouTube channel, of course, Mr. Gareth Soloway. Game Plan, live, weekdays at 9 a.m. I actually watch this show, Gareth, so I'm one of your biggest fans.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. That's awesome to hear, buddy. Thank you.
You're doing a good job over there. Anyway, thanks again for stopping in today. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks, Paul. Have a great weekend.
You bet. All right. You guys, of course, we do a lot of these kinds of chart analysis. If you like these kinds of episodes, let me know. All you have to do is smash the like button right now. That will give us some indicators that you do like charting from Gareth and some of our other analysts that we bring in. I'd love to get your feedback. Make sure and drop some comments down below. If you guys are not in our Diamond Circle, make sure and jump into that as well. It's additional content that we do that is not over here on YouTube, so it's another place that you guys can get some really great stuff in terms of our research here at PBN. And it's free. All you have to do is click the link down below. It's very simple. If you guys want to catch me slashing out there on X, make sure and follow me. It's @PaulBear. We'll catch you next time right here on TechBath.